Let's go ahead and bring in Mike Bako. He's a sports editor at dailynational.com. Mike, glad to see you again. First, what happens to these athletes that test positive? Obviously, they go into isolation, but can they compete, or is this the end of the road for their Olympic dreams?
Yeah, it basically depends on when their event is actually taking place. They'll need to go into isolation. So obviously the games don't start till Friday. So depending on when in the cycle their events and their participation is needed, they may be able to come back and play and participate. But right now, in terms of the athletes who are potentially testing positive before even going, we're seeing some of that with the U.S. men's basketball team, some of those individuals. And then undoubtedly, as more of these athlete and nation contingents are getting ready to travel and go and arrive, we're going to be seeing more of this news trickle in. It just so happens that the South African contingent was one of the first to arrive, and that's why we're hearing it about them. But undoubtedly, we're going to be hearing more of these stories.
I imagine these athletes aren't just taking time off in the days leading up to their competitions. This is notably a setback for anybody who tests positive.
Absolutely. Not only is this a setback for them, but also for their teams. I mentioned the U.S. men's basketball team. They're still doing exhibition games and getting ready to basically put together their final roster. As of a few days ago, they only had 6 active participants on their team, between players that are playing in the NBA Finals, players who are nursing injuries and leaving, someone like Kevin Love, and then players who are in some sort of COVID protocol. So what happens when these teams show up in the Olympic Village? What's the backup? What's the backstop for specific teams that have a set number of individuals that need to either play or to fill out the roster? That's something that still is up in the air. Do you just fly in people from back home? Do you have a roster set up potentially in another Japanese city in complete isolation, and then you're able to shuttle them over? That's a big expenditure and a big logistical requirement for a lot of these teams. So really anyone knows. We're really making this up, and a lot of these nations and Olympic committees are making it up as they're going along.
The local officials and the Olympic Committee are facing increasing pressure to cancel the games. Do you think there's any chance that might actually happen?
Zero chance the games are canceled. Unfortunately, this is going to be one of those anthropological look back and see what happens and what we can learn from it. These games are going off. There's too much invested. We're too far down the line. Right now, the time, or I should say the time for them to have been canceled, was when all that pressure, especially internally in Japan, when the major sponsors, the major newspaper organizations put out editorials saying no one wants this. They were at an 80% disapproval rating. And this is even before Delta and the spikes and the slower than expected vaccination rate locally. So that time has come and passed. Right now, if we end up talking about this 2-3 weeks after the Olympics, it's going to be about parsing out what went right, what went wrong. Unfortunately, there's probably going to be a lot that goes wrong with this.
This pandemic has cast a dark shadow over sports, and yet here we are. What does it mean for people in the world of sports that, yes, this can happen even in a pandemic?
It's amazing that this is now rearing its ugly head. We're seeing it in Major League Baseball with the New York Yankees just coming off of the All-Star break. 3 of their All-Star players who went with all the other All-Stars. This is something that could have derailed the Major League Baseball season. A couple of the Yankee players finding themselves positive. Philadelphia Phillies, same sort of situation. Right now, the NBA probably is on pins and needles right now, hoping that no star player from the NBA Finals, from the Suns or from the Bucks, test positive. Can you imagine that? Game 6, Game 7, potentially deciding the NBA Finals, that a player has to sit out? That's something that is just going to become a reality, and we thought that this was past us. But as we head into the Olympics, as we head into the start of the football season, the NFL, and the college basketball season, and baseball, this is going to be something that unfortunately we're talking about for the coming weeks and months.
Mike Bako, dailynational.com. Thank you for joining us.